She had 8 days, $912, and a choice that would cost her everything. Most people would have stayed silent. Most people would have looked away. Most people would have chosen survival. But when that billionaire's son grabbed her coworker's wrist, Lisa Parker did something that destroyed her life in 60 seconds and changed it forever in ways she never saw coming. This is the true story of a waitress who lost everything by doing the right thing. And what happened next? A helicopter landed on a rooftop, a door opened, and nothing was ever the same again. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll question everything you thought you knew about courage. And you'll never forget what happened to the woman who said no to power. Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about someone who changed my understanding of what courage really means. Her name was Lisa Parker, and when I first heard her story, I couldn't believe it was real. But it is real. Every word of it. And by the time I'm done telling you what happened, I think you'll understand why her story matters so much. Lisa was 24 years old, living in a small city called Portland, Maine. You know that feeling when you're just barely keeping your head above water? When every single dollar has a name on it before you even earn it? When you go to bed worried and wake up even more worried? That was Lisa's life, day after day after day. She had exactly $912 in her bank account. I know that number because it's going to matter in a minute. $912 between her and complete disaster. Lisa worked at a little restaurant called the Lighthouse Cafe down by the waterfront. It wasn't fancy. The kind of place where fishermen came for breakfast, where tourists stopped for clam chowder, where locals gathered because the coffee was hot and the owner didn't rush you out the door. The floors creaked. The paint was peeling in the corners. But it was honest work, and Lisa needed honest work desperately. See, Lisa wasn't just working to survive herself. She was taking care of her father, Robert. Her strong, funny, brilliant father who had raised her alone after her mother died. The man who taught her to ride a bike, who sat through every school play, who worked 2 jobs to send her to community college. Now he was sick. Really sick. He had a rare form of lung disease that was slowly stealing his breath away, and he needed round-the-clock care at a medical facility called Ocean View Living Center. The cost? $2,400 every single month. On top of that, Lisa was studying to become a paramedic. She was in her 2nd year at Portland Community College, taking night classes after her restaurant shifts, dreaming of riding in ambulances, of saving lives, of making her father proud. Her tuition payment was $4,000, and it was due in exactly 8 days. Do the math with me for a second. $2,400 for her dad's care. $4,000 for school. Her own rent was $850. That's more than $7,000 she needed immediately, and she had $912 to her name. Every paycheck got divided up before she even saw it. Every tip got counted twice. There was never money for new clothes or a movie or even a cup of coffee that she didn't make herself. But Lisa never complained. Not once. Not even when she visited her father and found him sitting by the window, struggling to breathe, asking her if she was eating enough because he worried about her. At the restaurant, Lisa had become part of a small family. There was Kevin, a kid fresh out of high school, who sang while he washed dishes. There was Mrs. Chun, who came in every morning for oatmeal and tea. There were the nurses from the hospital, who always left good tips. And then there was the new girl, Amy. She was only 18, scared of everything, her hands shaking every time she carried a tray. It was her first real job. Lisa took Amy under her wing. "You're doing great," she'd tell her. "Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're just as important as anyone who walks through that door." Amy would look at her with such gratitude it almost hurt. Lisa remembered being that scared once, before life forced her to be strong. Their manager, Mr. Burke, was a different story. He was the kind of man who avoided conflict like it was a disease. If someone complained, he'd give them free food. If someone was rude, he'd apologize even when it wasn't his fault. He cared more about not making waves than protecting his staff, and everyone knew it. The restaurant had one particularly important customer, Harrison Maritime. It was a huge shipping company that ordered catering for all their corporate events, their meetings, their client dinners. That account basically kept the Lighthouse Cafe in business, and Mr. Burke treated it like it was made of solid gold. The owner of Harrison Maritime was a man named William Harrison. You probably heard the name before. He was one of those people who showed up in business magazines. Shipping magnate. Real estate investor. One of the wealthiest men in New England. His company owned cargo ships, managed ports, controlled a big chunk of the maritime trade along the East Coast. Lisa had never met him. Why would she? She was just a waitress serving lobster rolls and coffee. But she'd met his son. Derek Harrison came into the cafe every few weeks, usually late at night, usually drunk, always loud. He wore designer clothes and drove a sports car that cost more than most people earned in 5 years. He treated everyone around him like they were beneath him, like they existed only to serve him. Every time Derek walked in, the whole restaurant changed. Conversations got quieter. Kevin suddenly found reasons to stay in the kitchen. Mr. Burke would appear, sweating, smiling that fake smile, offering free appetizers, free drinks, whatever it took to keep Derek happy. Lisa hated it. She hated the way Derek snapped his fingers at the staff. She hated the way he sent back perfectly good food just because he could. She hated the way he looked at the waitresses like they were objects. But she kept her head down. She had to. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with her father depending on her. Not with school tuition due next week. Not when she was this close to actually building something better. So when Derek came in, Lisa would take a deep breath, put on her professional face, and do her job. She told herself it was temporary. Just get through school. Just keep Dad safe. Just survive. But sometimes surviving means swallowing your dignity. And Lisa was getting tired of swallowing. She had no idea that everything was about to change. That Thursday night started like any other shift. The cafe was about half full. Mrs. Chun was finishing her dinner. The hospital nurses were laughing over their coffee. Kevin was in the back humming to himself while he cleaned. Amy was standing by the door, nervously straightening the menus for probably the 100th time that night. Then the door banged open so hard it hit the wall. Derek Harrison walked in with 2 of his friends, loud and obnoxious, reeking of alcohol and arrogance. You could smell the entitlement on them from across the room. The whole restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Amy froze. Her eyes went wide with panic. Lisa watched from behind the counter, her hand tightening around the coffee pot she was refilling. Something in her gut twisted. She had a bad feeling about this. Hey! Derek's voice cut through the quiet conversations like a knife. We need a table. Now. And make sure it's clean. I don't want to sit where poor people have been sitting. His friends thought this was hilarious. They laughed like he was some kind of comedian. Amy stood there, clutching those menus against her chest like they were a shield. Her face had gone pale. Yes, sir, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Right this way. Lisa felt something dark twist in her stomach. She knew she should look away. Mind her own business. Finish her shift. She had bills to pay. A father to take care of. A future to protect. But she couldn't stop watching. Derek and his friends settled into a booth, and immediately the complaints started. The water tasted weird. The menu was depressing. The whole place was a dump. Why did they even come here? Mr. Burke appeared instantly, wringing his hands, his forehead covered in nervous sweat. Mr. Harrison, so wonderful to see you. Can I get you gentlemen something on the house? Perhaps our special lobster dinner? Derek waved him away, like he was swatting a mosquito. Just bring me whatever. And try not to screw it up this time. Lisa tried to focus on her own tables. She brought Mrs. Chun her check. She refilled coffee for the nurses. She smiled and made small talk. But her attention kept drifting back to that booth. Derek was getting louder. He sent back his fish twice, claiming it was overcooked, then undercooked, even though Lisa knew the kitchen had made it perfectly both times. He made crude jokes about the restaurant, about the neighborhood, about the people who worked there. And Mr. Burke just kept apologizing, kept offering freebies, kept bowing and scraping like Derek was royalty. It made Lisa sick to watch. Then Amy had to bring their table dessert. 3 slices of blueberry pie. Lisa saw the moment everything shifted. She saw Amy approach nervously, carefully setting down the plates. And she saw Derek look up at Amy with an expression that made Lisa's blood run cold. It was the look of a predator who just spotted prey. Well, Derek said, his voice dripping with false charm. Aren't you pretty? What's your name, sweetheart? Amy's voice came out in a tiny squeak. Amy, sir.
Amy.
I like that. Derek leaned back, looking her up and down in a way that made Lisa's hands clench into fists. You've been watching me all night. I get it. Girls like you always notice guys like me. Amy's face turned bright red.
No, sir.
I wasn't. I was just making sure everything was okay. Oh, I'm not okay yet. Derek pulled out his phone and slid it across the table toward her. Put your number in there. We'll go out sometime. I'll show you what real money looks like. Amy stood there frozen. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, looking for help, for anyone to save her from this moment. Mr. Burke was suddenly very busy wiping down a far counter, his back turned. Kevin had disappeared into the kitchen. The other customers were looking at their plates. Come on, don't be shy, Derek pressed, his voice getting harder. Just type it in. It's not complicated. I can't, sir, Amy whispered. It's against the rules. Derek's smile vanished. Rules. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sweetheart, my family practically owns this waterfront. I don't follow rules. I make them. His hand shot out and grabbed Amy's wrist.
Not gently.
His fingers dug into her arm, pulling her closer to the table. Amy let out a small gasp of pain and fear. Please, she said, tears forming in her eyes. You're hurting me. That's when Lisa moved.
She didn't think.
Thinking would have stopped her. Thinking would have reminded her about the tuition bill, about her father's care facility, about everything she had to lose. But some things are more important than thinking. Lisa crossed that restaurant in 5 long steps. She reached Derek's table, and her voice came out cold and clear, cutting through the tension like a blade. Let her go. Derek's head whipped around. He looked at Lisa like she was an insect that had just spoken. Excuse me? I said let her go. Lisa's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, but her voice didn't shake. Right now. For a moment, Derek just stared at her in disbelief.
Then he laughed. A short, barking sound.
Who the hell are you? I'm the person telling you that what you're doing is assault. Lisa stepped between Derek and Amy, putting herself directly in the line of fire. You're harassing my coworker. You put your hands on her without permission. That's illegal. I'm asking you to leave. The entire restaurant had gone silent. Every single head had turned to watch. One of Derek's friends snorted. Did she just threaten us? I think the waitress is trying to play cop, the other one sneered. But Derek wasn't laughing anymore. His face had gone dark with anger. Slowly, he released Amy's wrist and stood up, using his height to try to intimidate Lisa. He was a good 6 inches taller than her. Do you have any idea who I am? He said quietly, dangerously. Yes, Lisa said, her voice steady even though inside she was screaming. You're Derek Harrison. Your father owns Harrison Maritime. That doesn't give you the right to put your hands on anyone. Derek's jaw clenched. You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life. Maybe, Lisa replied. But it was my mistake to make. She turned to Mr. Burke, who was standing nearby looking like he might actually faint. Call the police if he doesn't leave voluntarily. Lisa, no. Mr. Burke started. Call them, Lisa repeated firmly. Derek stared at her for a long, terrible moment. Then he smiled. A cold, cruel smile that promised revenge. You're done, he said softly. You, this dump, everyone who works here.
Done.
He threw several $100 bills on the table and stormed out, his friends scrambling after him. The door slammed shut. The bell above it jangled frantically. Lisa stood there, her whole body shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Then Mr. Burke's voice shattered the silence. You're fired. The words hit Lisa like a physical punch to the stomach. You're fired. Get your things and get out. Mr. Burke's face was bright red, his hands trembling with a mixture of rage and fear. Do you have any idea what you've just done? The Harrison family is our biggest client. They'll destroy us. They'll destroy me. Lisa felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Her ears were ringing. He assaulted Amy, she said, her voice sounding distant even to herself. I couldn't just stand there and… I don't care, Mr. Burke shouted, and spit flew from his lips. You don't get to make those decisions. Not in my restaurant. You just cost me everything. Behind her, Lisa could hear Amy crying softly. Kevin had come out of the kitchen, his face pale with shock. The nurses at the counter were staring. Mrs. Chun was shaking her head sadly. But Mr. Burke, Lisa tried one more time.
Get out.
Lisa grabbed her jacket from the hook by the kitchen. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely get her arms through the sleeves. As she walked toward the door, she passed Amy, who was wiping tears from her red, swollen eyes. I'm so sorry, Amy whispered. I'm so sorry you got fired because of me. Lisa stopped. She took the young girl's hand and squeezed it. Don't you ever apologize for this, she said firmly. What happened tonight wasn't your fault. It was his. Remember that. Then she pushed through the door and out into the cold Maine night. The walk home was a blur. Lisa moved on autopilot through the familiar streets, her mind spinning in circles like a broken record. Fired. She'd been fired. The one thing she'd been desperately trying to avoid had happened anyway. Her apartment building looked shabbier than usual under the harsh streetlights. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her tiny studio, let herself in, and sat down on her second-hand couch in the dark. Then she opened her banking app on her phone. The number staring back at her was devastating. $912. That was it. That was all that stood between her and complete disaster. Her father's care home cost $2,400 a month. Her tuition payment of $4,000 was due in 8 days. Her rent was $850, due in 2 weeks. Lisa did the math in her head. Even if she found another job tomorrow, which she wouldn't, she couldn't possibly earn enough in time. She was going to lose everything. Her father would have to leave Ocean View. They'd move him to a state facility. One of those horrible places Lisa had visited when she was first searching for care. Places where patients sat in hallways all day. Where the staff was overworked and overwhelmed. Where her father would be just another sick old man slowly fading away, struggling to breathe, alone and confused. And her dream of becoming a paramedic? Of helping people during their worst moments? Of making her father proud?
Gone.
Finished. Over. For the first time in years, Lisa put her face in her hands and cried. Not quiet tears, but deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep in her chest. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the pressure she'd been holding inside for so long came pouring out. She'd done the right thing. She knew she'd done the right thing. But the right thing was going to destroy her life anyway. The next 3 days were agony. Lisa forced herself to get up, to shower, to pretend she had a plan. She applied for jobs online. She called every restaurant, every cafe, every diner in the city. But the responses were all the same. We'll let you know. We're not hiring right now. Can you provide a reference? References. That was the killer. Mr. Burke wasn't going to give her a good reference. And in a city like Portland, word traveled fast in the restaurant business. Who would hire someone who'd been fired for confronting a customer? Especially a customer as powerful as Derek Harrison? On the 4th day, Lisa received an email from her college. Subject line: Urgent. Account past due. She stared at it for 10 minutes, but couldn't bring herself to open it. That afternoon, she was sitting in her apartment, staring at nothing, when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Then something slid under her door. It was a thick envelope. Expensive cream-colored paper. No stamp, which meant it had been hand-delivered. Lisa's stomach clenched with dread. This was it. The lawsuit. Derek Harrison was going to sue her for defamation or harassment or whatever rich people sued poor people for when they got embarrassed. With trembling hands, she tore open the envelope. The letterhead was embossed with an elegant logo, Harrison Maritime Industries. But it wasn't from a lawyer. Miss Parker, I was informed of the incident that occurred at the Lighthouse Cafe on the evening of Thursday, November 16th. I was also informed of your subsequent termination. My executive assistant, Patricia Morgan, will be visiting the cafe tomorrow at 3 p.m. She would like to speak with you in person. Your attendance is respectfully requested. Sincerely, William Harrison. Lisa read it 3 times. William Harrison. Not Derek. The father. The billionaire himself. This was worse than a lawsuit. This was personal. Her first instinct was to run. To pack a bag, leave Portland, start over somewhere else where the Harrison name meant nothing. But where would she go? What about her father? What about her future? And then another thought came to her, quieter but stronger. She'd already lost everything. What more could they take from her? She'd stood up for what was right once. She could do it again. That night, Lisa ironed her one interview outfit. A simple black skirt and white blouse she'd bought from a thrift store 3 years ago. She polished her worn shoes. She tried to sleep but spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, wondering what William Harrison wanted from her. Wondering if tomorrow would be the day her life ended completely. Or if, somehow, impossibly, it might be the day everything changed. The next afternoon, Lisa stood across the street from the Lighthouse Cafe at exactly 2:55 p.m.
Her mouth was dry. Her palms were sweating.
Every instinct in her body told her to turn around and run. But her feet carried her forward anyway. At precisely 3 o'clock, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. It wasn't flashy. No bright paint or loud engine. But everything about it screamed money. The kind of quiet, understated wealth that didn't need to show off. A woman stepped out. She was in her 50s, dressed in an elegant charcoal suit with silver hair pulled back in a perfect bun. Her movements were efficient, professional. This was Patricia Morgan. Lisa watched her walk into the cafe. Then, taking a deep breath that felt like it might be her last, Lisa crossed the street and followed. Inside, Mr. Burke was practically bowing to Patricia. His face was covered in sweat, his voice shaking as he offered her coffee, pie, anything she wanted. Patricia's eyes swept the cafe with a cool, assessing gaze. Then she spotted Lisa standing by the door. "Miss Parker," she said. It wasn't a question. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Harrison would like to meet with you. A car is waiting outside." Lisa's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Meet with me? Where?" "Mr. Harrison prefers to discuss matters in person." Patricia's tone was polite but firm. "I can assure you that you're not in any legal trouble. This is simply a conversation." Mr. Burke looked confused and terrified. He'd clearly expected lawyers and lawsuits, not a personal invitation. Sarah thought about refusing, about demanding answers first. But what was the point? She had nothing left to lose. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll go." The car was even more luxurious inside than it looked from the outside. Soft leather seats. Not a speck of dust anywhere. It smelled like expensive cologne and possibility. But they didn't drive to downtown Portland where all the office buildings were. Instead, they headed toward the waterfront, past the tourist areas, to a private section of the marina Lisa didn't even know existed. They pulled up to a helipad. And there, rotors already beginning to spin, was a helicopter. Lisa's heart stopped. A helicopter. He'd sent a helicopter for her. "This way, Miss Parker," Patricia said calmly, as if this were completely normal. Lisa climbed aboard on shaking legs. The interior was beautiful. Cream leather seats. Polished wood trim. The Harrison Maritime logo etched into a small plaque on the wall. As the rotors spun faster, the noise became deafening. A deep thumping that vibrated through Lisa's entire body. Then they lifted off, and Portland fell away beneath them. Lisa watched her city shrink into a miniature version of itself. The streets where she'd struggled. The buildings where she'd dreamed. The waterfront where she'd worked. All of it looked different from up here. Smaller. More manageable. They flew over the harbor, the water glittering in the afternoon sun, and landed on the roof of a modern glass building overlooking the ocean. It wasn't the tallest building in Portland, but it was clearly exclusive. As the helicopter powered down, A door opened, and William Harrison stepped out. He wasn't what Lisa expected. He wasn't wearing a three-piece suit or dripping with jewelry. He was in his mid-60s, dressed in simple slacks and a navy sweater. His gray hair was windblown. His face was deeply lined. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and they studied Lisa with an intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through her. "Miss Parker," he said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." He gestured to a chair by a floor-to-ceiling window. The view was breathtaking. The entire harbor spread out like a painting. Ships coming and going. The ocean stretching to the horizon. Lisa sat. Her heart was pounding so hard, she was sure he could hear it. William poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher and handed one to her. Then he sat down across from her. "I've seen the security footage from the cafe," he began, getting straight to the point. "Every second of what happened. I've also had my team look into your background." Lisa's blood ran cold. "A background check. I know you're a second-year student in the paramedic program at Portland Community College," William continued. "I know you have a 4.0 GPA. I know your father, Robert, is at Ocean View Living Center. I know what his care costs. And I know that as of yesterday, you had an overdue tuition bill and less than $1,000 in your bank account." Lisa felt exposed. Naked. He knew everything. Every struggle. Every failure. Every desperate moment. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. William was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that sounded like regret. "My son is a disappointment to me." The words hung in the air between them. "I gave Derek every advantage," William continued. "The best schools. Unlimited resources. My name and my wealth. I hoped to raise a man of character." He paused. "Instead, I raised a man who thinks he can do whatever he wants because of who his father is." He turned to look directly at Lisa. "Then you came along. A waitress working for minimum wage. Your whole life hanging by a thread. Everything to lose. And you were willing to cut that thread yourself rather than stand by and watch my son hurt someone." Lisa didn't know what to say. "I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who say yes to me," William continued. "People who flatter me, who want something from me, who would never dream of standing up to me or my family. They're weak. They're predictable." He leaned forward slightly. "You're not." Lisa found her voice. "I just did what anyone should have done." "But no one else did," William said quietly. "Everyone else in that cafe looked away. Your manager, your co-workers, every customer. Everyone chose their own comfort over doing what was right." He stood up and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "I've already dealt with Derek. He's been removed from my company. His trust fund is frozen. He'll be working an entry-level position at one of our warehouses in Alaska, earning an hourly wage like everyone else. It's time he learned what the real world looks like." Lisa's eyes widened. He'd punished his own son. William turned back to her. "But that doesn't solve the problem of you. You did the right thing, and you were punished for it. That's unacceptable to me." He walked back to his chair and sat down. "So here's what I'm offering you." William Harrison looked at Lisa with those sharp, intelligent eyes, and when he spoke, every word felt like it carried the weight of a promise that would change everything. "First," he said, "I purchased the Lighthouse Cafe as of this morning." Lisa's jaw dropped. You bought the cafe?" It was a simple transaction. The previous owner was eager to sell. William waved his hand as if buying a business was as casual as buying groceries. "I've terminated Mr. Burke's employment. His behavior was unacceptable, protecting a customer over an employee who was being assaulted." Lisa couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. "I'm offering you your job back," William continued. "Not as a waitress, but as the general manager of the establishment. Your salary will be $75,000 a year. You can hire your own staff, set your own policies, run it however you see fit." $75,000. Lisa's entire body went numb. That was more money than she'd ever imagined making. It would solve everything. Her father's care, her tuition, her rent, Everything. But William wasn't finished. That's the small part of my offer, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. The more important part is this. Harrison Maritime will pay your remaining paramedic school tuition in full. We'll also assume complete responsibility for your father's medical care at any facility you choose. If you want him at Ocean View, he stays at Ocean View. If you want him somewhere better, we'll arrange it. Tears sprang to Lisa's eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they came anyway, hot and overwhelming. Why? She choked out. Why would you do this for me? William leaned back in his chair. Because I'm a businessman, Miss Parker, and I recognize a valuable asset when I see one. People with your kind of integrity are exceedingly rare. They can't be bought, but they can be invested in. He paused, letting his words sink in. There's one more part to this offer. When you graduate from the paramedic program, I'd like to offer you a position overseeing health and safety programs across all Harrison Maritime facilities. You'll develop emergency response protocols, manage our occupational health services, ensure our dock workers and ship crews get the medical attention and support they need. It won't be easy. You'll be responsible for hundreds of employees' well-being across multiple states. I'll expect the same courage and compassion you showed in that cafe every single day. Lisa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her mind was spinning. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. I don't understand, she said. You don't even know me. I know enough, William replied. I know that when everyone else in that room chose comfort, you chose courage. I know that when you had everything to lose, you lost it anyway because it was the right thing to do. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. He stood up and extended his hand. I'm not offering you charity, Miss Parker. I'm offering you an opportunity, an investment in your potential. The choice is yours. Lisa looked at his outstretched hand. This was real. This was actually happening. She thought about her father, about the possibility of getting him the best care available. She thought about finishing school without the constant terror of how she'd pay for it. She thought about becoming the paramedic she'd always dreamed of being, helping people through their worst moments with compassion and skill. She thought about Amy crying in the cafe and realized that standing up for her had been worth it after all. Lisa stood up and took William Harrison's hand. I accept. The months that followed were like living in a dream. Lisa's father was moved to Bayshore Medical Center, a beautiful facility with ocean views and music therapy and staff who actually cared. The first time Lisa visited, she found her father sitting in a sunny room, looking out at the water, and Robert turned to her with clear, bright eyes. Lisa, honey, he said, his breathing easier than it had been in months. What a beautiful place this is. Lisa burst into tears and hugged her father tight, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders that she'd been carrying for years. At the Lighthouse Cafe, Lisa made changes. She renovated the space, bought new equipment, and most importantly, raised everyone's wages. She promoted Kevin to assistant manager. She brought Amy back, not as a hostess, but as a supervisor in training, and watched the shy girl blossom into a confident young woman. Lisa finished her final year of paramedic school with honors, graduating at the top of her class. On graduation day, Kevin and Amy were in the audience cheering. Patricia Morgan was there representing Harrison Maritime, and in the front row, breathing through an oxygen tube, but smiling with pride, was her father. Her first day at Harrison Maritime was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She wore her crisp new uniform with the company logo, toured the main occupational health clinic, and met with the team she'd be leading. The work was meaningful. She developed safety protocols, conducted health screenings for dock workers, created emergency response programs that actually helped people. William Harrison expected excellence, and Lisa gave it to him. But more than that, she gave compassion. Something that couldn't be measured in spreadsheets, but changed lives every single day. 6 months into her new job, Lisa was walking through one of the warehouse facilities, checking on a newly installed medical station, when she saw him. Derek Harrison, wearing a warehouse uniform, looking at a job board for available shifts. He'd lost weight. His expensive haircut had grown out. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something quieter. Maybe humility. maybe just exhaustion. Their eyes met across the warehouse floor. Lisa saw him brace himself, waiting for her to gloat or mock him. But she felt nothing but a quiet sense of closure. She nodded politely, like you would to any colleague, and turned back to her work. When she looked back, he was gone. Lisa stood by the window of the health clinic that afternoon, looking out at Portland Harbor. The city that had almost broken her now spread out before her like a promise kept. She thought about that Thursday night at the cafe, about the choice she'd made, about how terrifying it had been to stand up when standing up meant losing everything. But she'd learned something important. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to gain what really matters. Integrity isn't free. Doing the right thing often costs you dearly. But it's also the only thing that can't be taken away from you. Sarah picked up her phone and called Bayshore Medical Center. "Hi," she said when the nurse answered. "Can you tell my dad I'll be there for Sunday dinner? Tell him I'm bringing that photo album he loves." "Of course, Miss Parker. He'll be so happy." Lisa hung up and smiled. For the first time in years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten.
Peace.
She'd done the right thing, and somehow, miraculously, the world had rewarded her for it. Not because the world is always fair, not because good things always happen to good people, but because one person saw her courage and decided to invest in it. Because sometimes, when you stand up for what's right, someone is watching, someone who matters. And that, more than anything else, makes all the difference. Remember this. Your character isn't defined by your circumstances. It's defined by the choices you make within them. What would you have done in Lisa's place? Would you have had the courage to stand up, even knowing it would cost you everything? That's the question we all have to answer for ourselves, every single day. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons.